I, Phil McNeely, President of the Duncanville Board of Trustees, call this meeting to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board Trustees is present and that the meeting has been duly called and that the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening. Our mission at Duncanville ISD is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. We will now move into our opening ceremonies. Trustee Vera Cruz, will you lead us in a
good.
invitation?
Yes, sir. If you would please bow your head for a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this business reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into the educators, students, and team of 8. I pray that our ideas and decisions are reflective of love and respect at its heart. Lord, give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May every leader and representative here be a shining example of your goodness and truth within the school district and beyond. In his mighty name we say, amen.
Now we'll have the pledge led by Carla Fade.
Please stand.
Now we will move to the administration of oath of office to elected trustees. Allie?
Good evening. Are we on? Yeah. If I could please have Trustee Ivory come down. If you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Lasagna Flowers Ivory,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of School Board Trustee,
of the office of School Board Trustee,
Place 4,
Place 4
of Duncanville ISD,
of Duncanville ISD,
of the State of Texas,
of the State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my abilities, preserve,
and will to the best of my ability preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. We will now move on to the superintendent's report. I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Smith.
All right, good evening. Thank you, President McNeely, other board members, and those that are in attendance this evening. The following items I would like to report on during the superintendent's report. The first is to provide a legislative update. Each month, we provide a legislative update. And so here's what I'd like to share with you. The legislative session is quickly approaching the end, and there's a strong push for priority legislation to get through the process. Although we are hopeful that this session will end in a favorable way for us, I do anticipate a special session could be called. In fact, on this Sunday, if you saw a lot of the political shows this Sunday, Governor Abbott said that he would veto any toned-down version of a voucher bill that came across his desk, and he would call the legislators back for a special session if they didn't expand the scope of school choice. So as I shared with you last week, it's really starting to heat up on this debate, And so we'll see where we are with, over the next couple of weeks. In Duncanville, of course, we're not sitting idle. We are making sure that our voices are heard, and we've partnered with Raise Your Hand Texas on several efforts. A few that I want to update you on. On May 1st, we had 2 teachers go to the Capitol with Dr. Halachka at the Raise Your Hand Texas event. We had Miranda Mays, who was last year's Teacher of the Year, and then we had Jessica Ford, who is a former Teacher of the Year, and she's a current leader in our district with our teachers. They had an opportunity to visit with Representative Sherman, Senator Royce West, and the legislative aide for Representative Davis. And then they also got to see the legislative process in action and were filmed and interviewed for the future Raise Your Hand Texas publication. And so we'll share that information with the board as soon as we get copies. In addition to visiting the Capitol, the teachers at Kennemer Middle School, they all signed rulers for the Raise Your Hand Texas Measure What Matters campaign. The rulers were a backdrop for the press conference on the steps of the Capitol, and they were read by several legislators. Only 2 education bills have been signed by the governor at this point. We got Senate Bill 838, which requires panic alerts in every classroom by 25-26. By the 25-26 school year. Of course, there's no funding attached with that, but that's what they are looking to require for school districts, one of those unfunded mandates. Also, Senate Bill 1008, which allows parents 90 days to show residency instead of 10 days. Now, parent has 10 days to complete the process to prove their residency. Well, they're looking to expand that to 90 days. There are 11 other bills that have passed both chambers, but they still have not made it to the governor's desk yet. 2 of these bills are finance bills. You've heard a lot of conversation about Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 30. They are both in the conference committee with the House and the Senate, continuing to negotiate. We're anxiously waiting to see what the results are. Based on the feedback we got this past weekend, I anticipate there's a high likely that the governor will extend a special session. One of the impacts that'll have on us as we try to get our budget passed is that we'll have to just, work on our budget, still not knowing the details of the bills that were going to be adopted, because the governor could extend that process. Of course, he could wield his power, and we could be, August still not really knowing what the finance and budget scenario is going to be. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of weeks to see the jockeying on the House and the Senate, and I think the governor's pretty much made it clear if there's no expansion of his voucher bill, there's a high likelihood that he's going to bring them back for a special session. A bill that is a hot topic right now in the committee is the substitute bill for Senate Bill 8. We've been communicating with legislators for the past week because this bill came out pretty quickly, and I think it was an opportunity to kind of push through, maybe under the radar, so to speak, vouchers through the House. This also would increase the number of state assessments. Just had an opportunity to view a video that was shared with me by Dr. Halachka. They're literally in the committee session right now, and Representative Alma Edwards from Houston was making some pretty strong arguments against the voucher program, and was really supporting us, our legislative agenda, and some of the things that we're really pushing forward for. And so she criticized the possible number of state assessments increasing, in addition to taking money from public schools and putting them in private schools in the form of these education savings accounts. So again, there's a lot of pushback, a lot of back and forth conversation. As I said last month, we're at the point where there's a lot of backdoor deals that will go on at this point. And so we'll just kind of have to wait and see how that plays out. But I have been very proud of how active we've been. We literally, actually today, I provided my superintendent talking points to the legislators as they were having their debate. And of course, we have representation down in Austin. We're meeting regularly with our representatives, and we're pushing forward the message from the board and the legislative priorities that you established. So I've been really proud of our active approach that we've taken this year in the legislative session. The next item that I have for you all is just to congratulate our Teachers of the Year. Just a few days ago, we had an awesome celebration. We enjoyed a royal celebration at this year's Employee Appreciation back on May 4th. We celebrated our retirees, and we gave a number of service awards. We honored each Spirit Champion winner. We recognized each Campus Teacher of the Year, and then we named the District Teacher of the Year for elementary and secondary. And so I just want to say, again, congratulations to Raven Hill from Bill Hart's Elementary and Miriam Espinoza from Duncanville High School as our elementary and secondary teachers of the year. And I'm looking forward to working with them next year, as they are really the ambassadors for our teachers as we go throughout the course of opening next school year in different groups and different presentations, and they'll be really at the forefront representing our district. So I'm excited to work with them. This weekend, the next item is just to share with you events from this weekend. This weekend, our girls track team won the state title at the UIL Track and Field Championships. And so we ought to just give them a round of applause for their efforts. We could have asked them to be here this evening. I bet you they'd be here pretty quick. They are pretty fast. But we couldn't turn it over that quick, so we will be looking forward to bringing them here so that they can share their medals with you and we can celebrate in their accomplishments. We had 3 relay teams there, and they did a wonderful job. And so I was so excited to hear that they won the state title. So looking forward to them being able to come and be recognized by you, board. Also, our boys finished second. They actually were in first, leading up to the very last event, the mile relay. And so they finished second. It's the second year in a row that they finished second. But they had a very, very strong performance, and the good news is many of them are returning next year, so we should be in this position again and hopefully get better results for the boys. But they all did an outstanding job, and really excited and looking forward for them to be able to come and share their success with you. The next item I have is Duncanville Reads. Duncanville Reads is a signature program in Duncanville. We've been working with Dr. Miner, who really has been the champion of this event, along with our librarians. This is the 5th year. But Dr. Miner, the Education Foundation, they partner with our librarians, Rotary, the Lions Club, and other local individuals to put books in the hands of our students and authors in the classroom. And so last week, the Education Foundation, we did have Trustee Fahey participate in that, but were there other trustees? Vera Cruz, good. Did anybody else participate? I don't want to miss anyone. Okay. But we had some of our trustees participate last week in the Education Foundation and in the book event, and so it was just, they were there distributing books. This week, the authors of those books will be in the district, and they're reading to our students and they're visiting with them. So it's just a great opportunity to promote reading. It's a great opportunity to promote authors. It's a great opportunity just to highlight the importance of reading for our students. We, of course, all know how important that is. It helps our students to build strong vocabulary, helps them with their critical foundation in building logic and problem solving, and it just exposes them to authors that otherwise they might not have an opportunity to see. And so, great event and outstanding authors, and very proud of all of the work that the librarians and others contributed to make it a success. The next item that I have is the Reed Middle School Muldrew Gymnasium Court. I'm really excited about this opportunity we have coming up on May 24th, be at 2:00 p.m. The communications department has worked with family and friends of Coach Sharon Smith, and we're Excited to be able to host them. Coach Smith is a graduate of Duncanville High School, former Pantherette. She played basketball at Ouachita Baptist University in Arkansas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What was it? Ouachita? Okay, so I didn't. Thank you. Ouachita Baptist University. I felt like I kind of had that one wrong. She began her teaching and her coaching career at Stephenville Junior High School before spending 31 years at Reed Middle School. And so would like to invite our community, of course, the board and friends out as we recognize her dedicated service and immeasurable impact in Duncanville ISD by naming the Reed Middle School Modrew Gym, the gym floor, in her honor on Wednesday, May 24th. So really looking forward to that. And I think I have one more item, Mr. President. Yes, sir, just one more item. The Texas Rangers is hosting Duncanville ISD Night. So we're encouraging everyone to join us at the Texas Rangers game at Globe Life Field as we celebrate Duncanville ISD Night on Wednesday, June 7th. Tickets purchased through this offer will include the co-branded hat that you see there, the Texas Rangers hat with the Duncanville D there on the side. At the game, Coach Reginald Samples, our head football coach, our state championship head football coach, will throw out the first pitch. Very interesting seeing that. He definitely better make it reach home plate, or he won't be able to live down that. And then our Capella Choir will sing the national anthem before the game. So it should be a great night to just showcase the students at Duncanville ISD. That concludes the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. We'll now move to recognitions, and we'll turn the meeting over to Connie Wallace.
Testing, testing. Well. It says that it's on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you could turn it up back there in the back.
Woody, if you guys will turn the microphone up. And we're ready for donations. Well, while they're getting the donations, slide up. I will just share with you guys that, pardon me, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith, this month for our donations. Next slide, please. We have, once again, lots of our community members and different entities supporting our Panther Pantry. Well over $3,000 of goods and services, items have been provided to our Panther Pantry this month. Are there any questions about any of the donations that have been made? All right. Next slide, please. All right, thank you guys so much for this opportunity to share about the donations. And for our recognitions this month, I'd like to pass the mic over to Dr. Goodman and to Dr. Nix.
Thank you. Good evening, President McNeely, members of the board, Dr. Smith. It is an absolute honor to be with you today to recognize this amazing group of individuals. Dr. Smith, when he first got here, had a vision, and he has a saying that he says, everything rises and falls with the leader. And he had a vision to develop a pipeline of leadership here in Duncanville. We know our teachers are important, and we know that our students are important. But leading our teachers and our students is very important as well. And so developing a pipeline and a program to develop that leadership has been our key focus for this many years, and we just continue to get better and better and better at doing that. Next slide, please. When we first started this, we really focused on developing principals. That was our focus. So developing assistant principals to principals, finding people who wanted to be principals. But with our feedback from our district, we found that not everybody that wants to be a leader wants to be just a principal. There's all kind of leadership opportunities, whether that be HR, whether that be in finance, whether that be whatever that may be. So we had to tailor our leadership development process to really develop leadership as leadership. So we focus on leadership development and organizational success, whatever that may look like, ultimately culminating in positive change for the organization. Next slide, please. Our goal is simple: to invest in our people, to identify people who want to be leaders and invest in them. Our purpose is so that when we have a hole or a position or an opportunity, was that my time? No, okay. When we have a hole or a position or opportunity, we have people that we can slide into those positions and not lose momentum. It's one thing to be a leader, it's another thing to be a leader in Duncanville. And so it has been our pleasure developing leadership in Duncanville. Oh, next slide, please. So just very briefly, we have a rigorous selection process, and board, let me share with you, it has been amazing watching the flow of people who want to be a leader in ILA. ILA standing for our Inspiring Leadership Academy. So we have an fall induction process that includes district-wide communication, applications, and we are so excited that, I know this doesn't sound good, but we're excited that we have so many applicants that we can't take them all, because that means we have quality people that are selected. We have resumes that they have to submit, applications, their principals must give them a favorable reference. They have to go through videos, feedback, collaborative sections. I mean, there's a lot that goes into selecting these individuals. So not just the process is rigorous, the selection process is rigorous as well, and we are excited to celebrate them this evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, Board, and Dr. Smith. First of all, this has been, go to the next slide, please, I'm sorry. We have, for the past 7 years now, every month we have offered this professional development opportunities for leaders who want to grow in Duncanville. And as Dr. Nix just said, based on our feedback last year, we have really retooled this process. So now we look at leadership through all aspects, general school district leadership, not just the principalship or the pipeline to the principalship. Our first session this year, as you can see a snippet of our curriculum, our first session this year included presentations by our Chief of Staff, our Director of Transportation, and our Chief of Police. Our focus was servant leadership, leadership as a service, and all of those individuals embody that servant leadership. Next slide, please. Next, we have our action learning projects, and beyond our monthly in-person professional development sessions, participants are expected to extend their learning. They do this by attending, you've seen them before, they attend board meetings. They also attend district-wide events each semester. They complete required reading assignments, take advantage of shadowing opportunities, so they have an opportunity to see other aspects of leadership in Duncanville, not just what they see in their current role. And they complete group projects and individual projects each month as well. The action learning projects allow them to see what the actual work of leadership in Duncanville looks like. Next slide, please. We are grateful to have many true servant leaders in Duncanville ISD. Each year, we select ambassadors, as you see on the screen. These are individuals who have come through our leadership pipeline right here in Duncanville, and they serve the current ILA members in many ways. One, mentorship. They also supervise their action learning projects. They follow up with them, help to check in with them, and make sure they are on the right track. They coach them, and they also help them determine what is a good fit for them as it relates to a leadership role. How can they serve in our district, whether that is leading as they may currently be as a leader in the classroom, as a teacher leader, or moving into another leadership role. Our ILA ambassadors help us to do that. Next slide, please. Thanks to Dr. Smith's vision and his belief that we can grow our own leaders right here in Duncanville, and of course your support, we have been fortunate to truly see leaders who have been in our own pipeline right here in Duncanville ISD. Since our very first academy during the 2016-2017 school year, we have had at least 29 members to be promoted here in our district. Some of them have been promoted more than once in our district. This school year, of all of our new principals, they were promoted all from right here within Duncanville ISD, many of them through our leadership pipeline. Dr. Nix and I are both excited to share with you that last week we completed this year's group of ILA. They had their last session and presented to many members of SLT, to Dr. Smith last week in their completer ceremony. At this time, I would like to introduce you to our newest cohort of ILA. I will call their names, and I will begin with our ambassadors, who, again, Dr. Nix and I are it's just two of us, and it's a lot of them. So we could not do this work without the help of those servant leaders who were selected and chose to be ambassadors for us. So I will begin with them and ask them to stand when we call their name. Alish Allen, who is currently the assistant principal at Reed. Elena Backham, who is a teacher specialist at Kennemer. Jamie Brown, the director of professional development. Napoleon Leva, DHS assistant principal. And Amber Washington is our last ambassador. She is a DHS assistant principal as well. And for our newest cohort of ILA, Alicia Beverly, Byrd Middle School. Jaway Daniels, Byrd Middle School. Candace Emerson, Collegiate. Tracy Felder, Reed Middle School. Jada Gordon, Central Elementary. Dana Hairgrove, Collegiate. Hillary Hobson, our Communications Department. Ifome Ihim, Reed Middle School. Toby Jones, Maryfield Elementary. Allison Lewis, Maryfield Elementary. Michaela Malone, Kennemer Middle School. Keandra Mason, Hastings Elementary. Reshanice Means, Hastings Elementary. And Suzanne Riddlespringer Brown, DHS. Please help us congratulate our newest members of our newest cohort of ILA, who we know will continue to lead right here in Duncanville. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any? We do not have any communication from citizens regarding a pending agenda item. We will now move into closed session. All right, we're back from closed session. We will now move into board activity agendas. Item A, reorganization of the board and election of officers. We will now have election for president, vice president, and secretary. Okay. Do I have nominations for president?
Yes, I would like to nominate Phil McNeely.
Second.
Any more nominations? Okay. All right. All in favor? Passes 7-0. Okay. Nominations for vice president.
President McNeely, I would like to nominate Dr. Lasagna Ivory for vice president.
Second.
I'd like to third it. Okay. Any more nominations for vice president? Okay, nominations over. All in favor? 7-0. Okay. Office of Secretary. Nominations.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Carla Fahey for secretary.
Second.
Carla has been nominated and second. Any more nominations? Nominations cease. All in favor? Secretary Carla Fahey, Vice President Dr. Ivory, and President Phil McNeely. Now we will move to take action on items from the closed session. Do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Chief Financial Officer as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any questions, comments, or discussions? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Director of Student Services as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? All in favor? 7-0 passes. Kathleen, will you now introduce? Hey, man, don't be telling me what to do. We're not in the script. Kathleen, will you introduce our new people, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. I'm excited to welcome our new staff members to you this evening, and we will start first with Mr. Todd Garrison. Mr. Garrison, if you'll join me at this time. We are happy to welcome Mr. Todd Garrison to Duncanville ISD as the Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Garrison is a graduate of Southwestern Oklahoma State University with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and Science Education and holds a Master of Education from the University of Oklahoma. Mr. Garrison started his career in education as a teacher and coach in Piedmont Public Schools in 1997. He also served as a principal and superintendent in Oklahoma, where he had oversight of all instructional, business, and other operations of the district. Upon relocating to Texas, Mr. Garrison served as the Assistant Superintendent of Finance in Kaufman ISD, and most recently as the Chief Financial Officer in Lancaster ISD. In his various roles, he has managed bonds, increased fund balance from 4% to 25% in 3 years, managed construction of new facilities, and has had oversight of auxiliary departments. Mr. Garrison is a collaborative, resourceful, and organized leader that has found success in maximizing opportunities for students. He is a strong communicator with excellent relationship building and problem-solving skills. We are ecstatic to welcome Mr. Garrison to the Duncanville ISD family as our new Chief Financial Officer. And next, Ms. Bradley, if you would join me at this time. Ms. Alicia Bradley brings over 28 years of experience in the field of education to her new role as the Director of Student Services for Duncanville ISD. Ms. Bradley is a graduate of East Texas State University and holds a Master of Education from Texas A&M Commerce. She began her career in education as a middle school teacher in 1996. Since that time, she has served as a coordinator for the Office of Student Discipline and Truancy, a program specialist, an assistant principal, and most recently serves as the principal of T.G. Terry Elementary School in Dallas ISD.
Ms. Bradley is an innovative, forward-thinking leader who possesses a track record of success. She believes that as long as you are still alive, your mission in life is not finished. We are excited to welcome Ms. Alicia Bradley to the Duncanville ISD family. Ms. Bradley. And at this time, if our new staff members have any family or friends here, if you would stand to be recognized at this time. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
would like,
We're going to move on to consent agenda.
okay, may I make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we move items 9A, 9C, 9D, 9E, 9G to the consent agenda area.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. I need a motion to pass the consent now.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments or discussion, questions? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Now we'll move on to the consideration of our action agenda. And Lord have mercy, we've moved.
Item B.
Okay. Okay, nominating a candidate for the TASB Board of Directors for Region 10, position D. Anybody nominate them?
I would like to nominate Ms. Janice Veracruz, trustee Janet Veracruz.
Okay.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to nominate Janet Veracruz. Any more nominations? Nominations cease. All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Janet. Okay. Somebody gonna have to help me. Where are we? F. Okay, we'll move on to item F. As soon as I find it. Okay. 2023 through 2025 interlocking agreement, Duncanville ISD and Shorty's Custom Paint. Dr. Jordan?
Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to share with you an exciting opportunity for our students at Duncanville High School. The collision repair and refinishing pathway under the Transportation, Distribution, and Logistics Program of Study have been presented with a unique and exciting educational opportunity at no cost to the district. In partnership with Shorty's Custom Paint, the high school students in this program will have the experience of repairing and refinishing a work van. So this is similar to what I call like flip your house. They're flipping a work van for Shorty's Custom Repair. The process of the repair, refinish, and custom paint falls in line with our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, but it also gives our students hands-on experience. In addition to the students in this pathway having the experience, our students working in our media pathway will also gain experience because they will have access to the production team with Shorties, and they've been teaching our kiddos how to record the transformation of the van behind the scenes. And once the van is actually completed, we will be on an episode of the Shorty's Dream Shop, which airs on Motor Trend television. So it is my recommendation that we establish this agreement with Shorty's Custom Paint for the 23-24 and 24-25 school year.
Are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Will this be helpful to our paint and body shop? Is there still a class? Will Mr. Shorty or the owner be teaching the trade, or will he be actually, his shop, doing the painting?
So this is actually our students in our automotive program will be completing the work, but we have 3 students that are already interning with Shorty's. One is a paid internship, and then one is for hours. And so Shorty and his crew is actually teaching our students through the internship, but we also will have a partnership where he's guiding us along the way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jordan, how did this partnership come about?
So Ms. Carla Coggins and the CTE department have been actively seeking partnerships. In the process of seeking those partnerships, they were looking for internships for our students. So one of our students actually signed on as an intern, and Shorty and the crew loved his work so much that they came to tour our automotive pathway. And so they saw all the great things going on with our automotive group and asked if we would be interested in partnering with them to complete the van.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I just wanted to mention, sometimes we do move the items on the action agenda to the consent, and it's kind of an expedient way to deal with things that happen every year. But this is really exciting that someone in the community decided to help out a career and technology program, and how helpful this is to the people that are participating in that class or area. So I think it's really neat, and someday I hope Mr. Shorty, if there is a Mr. Shorty, will come and let us thank him.
There is, and we will make sure of it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
We need to vote on it, don't we?
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I make a motion that we approve this interlocal agreement with Shorty's Custom Paint.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any question, discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. You ready? And we move on to 9H, board member recognition. And Trustee Phillips, I will now turn the meeting over to you. Let us hear from you, please.
Thank you, President McNeely. This is probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do in a very long time, but for personal reasons, I have to. So I wrote everything out because I would probably forget what I wanted to say, and everybody has their own individual cards, so you know what I wanted to say to you, but I want to say this. So my fellow board members and Dr. Smith, I would like to express my deep appreciation for each and every one of you. As the minutes wind down for our work together, I am filled with gratitude for the privilege of serving alongside each dedicated, passionate, and talented individual sitting here tonight. Throughout our time together, I've been consistently impressed by the knowledge, the experience, and the unwavering commitment that each of you bring to the table. Our board meetings have been marked with thoughtful discussion, creative problem solving, and a shared vision for the future of our district. Together, we faced challenges and overcome obstacles, and at times seemed unsurmountable. Together, We have navigated complex issues and have always remained focused on the needs and the concerns of those we serve. Each of you has played a vital role in our collective success. So again, I say that I am truly grateful for the opportunity to have worked alongside such an outstanding group of individuals. Thank you for your tireless dedication and unwavering commitment and your inspiring leadership. It has been a true honor to serve with each and every one of you. Thank you, Duncanville ISD, for 6 amazing years. And to my family, my riders right there, they were there when I wanted to run for the board, when I jumped out of my comfort zone and started knocking on doors and talking to people about why I wanted to sit in this seat. My family is always there for me, no matter what crazy idea I have or desire that I have. My family stands beside me. They walk with me. They support me in ways that I just can't even say thank you enough for always supporting me. But I just want y'all to know that your unwavering support, your love and encouragement means the world to me. And I know I can always count on y'all. So thank y'all for being here tonight. And thank y'all so much for being my family here. Thank you.
Would any board member like to make a comment? Janet?
I really hate to see you go. You have given us so much of yourself, and that's part of the problem, I know. She's not moving out of Duncanville, though, is she? Right. And she's a talented realtor. I've sold or bought 3 different homes through her help. And it's kind of a scary deal to let you go, because we were the top 5 school board in the state. This was the original group, and so we'll change a little bit, but not much. But thank you so much. You really provided a lot of expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I understand why. I haven't processed it all through, but I understand. But my memories of you go way back when Joe Veracruz sat here, and that's when we first met. It goes back to the coat drives, to the things that we did together as a group of people who had voice in the community and continue to have that voice. And you took me under your wing. And I'll never forget, you mentored me and you encouraged me. I'll never forget that. I know, and you still do. So that's not going to stop. And you're my prayer warrior. So I'm going to just miss you, but I'm not going to say goodbye. So thank you.
We will indeed miss you. And I've already cried. But you know I love you. We go way back. I mean, before school board, we go back to boosters, we go back to PTA a long time. And it's, I just want you to know you were a very vital part of that board, that outstanding board. And your influence, you're the beginning of our coat drive. That speaks volumes for your heart for kids and our students. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate you and love you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Dr. Alvey?
She's protesting.
I'm protesting.
Me too.
I don't know what to say. I've been texting her all of my protest, but as a leader, I appreciate what you brought to the table. As a board member, you were a representative of parents, and you represented as a board member, and you did a great job balancing both. And everybody that knows you knows that you are very passionate about whatever it is you decide to be passionate about. But what I appreciated the most as I got to know you is that you're not just passionate about things, that you're also very coachable. And that made you a great team member for me. And so thank you so much for sharing ideas and being transparent. And we grew together. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Jackie?
So, Trustee Cassandra Phillips, if I had 10,000 tongues, I could not thank you enough for what you have done for me to encourage me as a trustee. So as I look at you and your heart for students, staff, and parents, you know, your leadership of the coat drive year after year, and you're just like steady, like we gonna do this, we gonna be successful. You know, you led successful teacher appreciation events where we fed teachers at several different schools. And, you know, you're a good steward of the district's resources. You're funny. You're very knowledgeable. You're very personable. I mean, you're leaving a big hole, but we are all so appreciative of what you have brought to our board and the service that you have provided to this district. You've left a legacy, and I really thank you, and I love you, and I appreciate you for who you are as a person as well as a trustee. So thank you so much, and we wish you Godspeed ahead. We're gonna look for you in the headlines, because I know that, yes, that's the kind of person that you are. So thank you so much for all you do for us individually and as a district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Cassandra Phillips, the last 6 years have been absolutely awesome. You have set the standard for what any superintendent would want to work with a school board member. You are a servant leader. You put others' needs above self, and you're consistent in doing that. You are an excellent listener. You reserve judgment. You take in all the information, and you reserve your judgment. And that is so critical for a board member and a superintendent. You definitely epitomize what it means to be a board member. You are incredibly passionate about the work you do, about your service. It means something to you. And I can recall one evening, you'll recall this, about 10:30 at night, you called me, and I acted like I was really happy to receive the call at 10:30 at night. But it is always good talking to you. But we had a long conversation about an issue, and it just shows the kind of person that you are. It was on your heart. You needed to talk about it. We talked through it. We visited the next day, and then you followed up with me, and we went through this process of where you did a self-analysis. You remember that? And I was so impressed about how important it was for you to look inside and see how you can grow and seek someone else's feedback. It's just an example of who you are. So anything that you touch is going to be great, because you've shown that you have the resiliency, the passion, the stick-to-itness. You will figure it out. So whatever that next is, it's already done. You're going to figure it out. And so it has been an honor for me to serve with you. We'll continue working together just in a different capacity, and I will often lean on you. I'm just proud to say that we have been able to serve together. I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I appreciate everything you've done for Duncanville ISD. And your service will be greatly missed.
I just wanted to say that your heart is for the kids. You were always passionate and always put them first, parents and the school district. And it wasn't hard to realize that after maybe a month after you got on the board of what kind of person you were. And it's really hard for me after 6 years to let you go, because I thought you had 3 more with me. But you just live around the corner, so at least look through the peephole if somebody knocks on your door, because it might be me. And I don't want Duncanville, is Duncanville gonna freeze next year because we don't have coats? But the way, the work that you did with the coat drive was amazing, just amazing. And it grew and grew every year under your leadership. And the best thing that I can say in serving with you is that I feel like I have a lifelong friend now. And that's the best thing that can come out of it. And I just want to say thank you and adios.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing? Nothing that I accomplished was done on my own. All of it was us. We did it all together. I couldn't have done it without every single one of y'all doing what you did to make it happen. So, I'm just like grateful that I had the opportunity to serve with this amazing board. Would y'all do me a favor? Give our board a hand, because they are amazing. I mean, they are amazing. And I'm not going anywhere. I just won't be sitting in this seat. I'm still going to support Duncanville ISD. I'll be here. Anything y'all need, I'm here. I just won't be here in this seat. Thank you.
Anybody want to add anything?
If you could just bear with us a moment, I have 2 presentations I need to give Trustee Phillips, and then we need to take some photos, and I'm sure her family may want to be in the photos too. So just bear with us just for one brief moment.
Board, would you join us back there?
pictures and the pause of getting everything done. We have three up. It'd be yourself, Janice, and whoever. You got 180 days. So you have to fill it by November or whatever the date is. That's by law. November 20-something.
Probably.
She doesn't, I mean, we can't make her, you know.
That's all we got.
But we,
Don't give me no.
This is very typical of Trustee Phillips. We all have part of her bouquet.
I don't have anything for you already. I'll get filled with thorns.
Yeah. I've had a few.
she gives us a hard time.
Okay, hang on just a minute, Dr. Rigby.
He's not ready yet, Dr. Bigby.
Okay, on behalf of the school board, I, President Phil McNeely, acknowledge and accept the receipt of a written resignation from trustee Cassandra Phillips. The board will address the vacancy in the following manner. Candidates will submit resumes and letters of interest to the board president. Resumes and letters of interest are due to the board on or before June 30th, 2023, followed by an interview with school board members. The school board must take action to fill this vacancy within 180 days after the vacancy was created. Therefore, the vacancy must be filled no later than November the 27th, 2023. Excuse me. The school board will appoint a successor trustee and will vote on the candidate at an upcoming board meeting. The newly appointed board member will serve until the next scheduled board election, which is May 4th, 2024. We will now move to information and discussion. Now, Dr. Bigby.
President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith, who in the world put a budget update after that on the agenda? You talk about Beauty and the Beast. Ms. Phillips, I think I can speak for the senior leadership team that we really appreciate what you've done, and we're going to miss you. We really are. Yeah, comes. See, in fact, it makes me so mad, I think I'll just quit. That'll show I'm on it. Okay, here we go. A lot of this stuff is going to be very repetitive because, as Dr. Smith mentioned earlier, we really don't know a whole lot coming out of this session. There's, I guess, not enough whiskey and cigars to get any legislation passed. So it's a little different this year. Okay, next slide. Once again, this was a budget development timeline that seems like a year ago that we started through that, but we're kind of in a holding pattern now. We have the departmental budgets in, and we're working on anything possibly as an additional budget request, but we have no idea what our revenue is going to be, so it's hard to deal with those right now. Next slide. Once again, these are the things that are still going on. Campus department budgets are here. Budget requests are in. We're meeting just about every day or every other day between departments to work through different scenarios. We're meeting weekly with Dr. Smith and some of the staff, and then we have the budget workshop scheduled for the 25th, which is scheduled because the 24th is the last day to vote on legislation until our illustrious governor calls a special session. So that'll probably going to take place from everything we've seen. Next slide. Once again, we project our budget off enrollment and what we think our enrollment's going to be for funding, which once again, PK kids only count a half. And then average daily attendance, you can see the projections there, and they're falling pretty well into place with how we're ending this year. In fact, the ADA that we're looking at to try to budget out of is within 20 of what we're ending the year with. The positive part of that is our ADA has stayed up through the second semester, and that hasn't happened since I've been here. Enrollment stayed up also, but the staff has done a great job of getting kids to school. Next slide. Things that can take place, enrollment versus ADA, I think that's probably dead in the legislature, except for possibly some of the categorical areas. Increased basic allotment, right now they're throwing a bone at it. Safety allotment, we'll see some, but we don't know what yet. Salary increases, the two houses can't agree on that. Unfunded mandates, Dr. Smith even mentioned one of those already that's passed. Enrollment fluctuations, and of course ADA fluctuations. Next slide. There's some bills that are floating around that could have a major impact on us. House Bill 100 pretty well revamps how our schools are funded. They're changing from ADA to enrollment in some special areas and totally revamping the minimum salary schedule. It's not getting any play right now, so we don't know how far that'll go. Senate Bill 8, which is a committee substitute now, and Dr. Smith has to be a little more political than I do, but the representative from Houston today, if you haven't seen that clip, it's well worth your time. She had a couple of quotes that I'm going to write on the wall. One, she said, "This is a sin, what we're doing here today." And she also said, "We've created the biggest monster I've ever seen." And as far as, she goes on to discuss how even though this bill is supposed to be aimed at the economically disadvantaged kids, that it's not. Because first of all, they can't get to a private school. And second of all, the $9,000 that's in there is not going to get them anywhere near the tuition in a private school. So they can disguise it all they want as helping special needs kids and economically disadvantaged kids, but that's not going to play itself out. It may be a way to put a foot in the door for next session, but anyway, that's preaching instead of talking, but it's kind of scary what's going on at the legislature as far as vouchers are concerned. Senate Bill 9, teacher retention, this is the $2,000 they give everybody, and then it goes away. House Bill 3 requires at least one armed individual on each campus. It's either an SRO or an employee that's been trained, and increases the safety allotment by a whopping 28 cents per student. Next slide. House Bill 13 increases the safety allotment by 10 times, which would be helpful. So hopefully we'll see that. Safety allotment based on campus size. This is basically to take care of the small rural schools because their student count's not high enough to generate a lot of money, but there'd be a minimum of $15,000 per campus. Homestead exemption from 40 to 70,000. Even if this passes, it'll take a constitutional amendment, so it'll have to be voted on before it becomes law. And we talked a little about this. It lowers the compression floor from 90% to 80%, which this year 600 schools were at the floor at 90%, which means they didn't compress our tax rate as far as they had been. Well, they'll drop that to 80, then we'll continue to be compressed on down to a lower tax rate, which is, that one's the only one that's really good because the state does make up the difference without a hold harmless. Okay, next slide. Once again, it's just where we are right now. We're about 28 million short of revenue, but the state's pretty slow about money coming in. It'll come in. Next slide. Once again, as we start building this budget, if nothing passes, we pretty well have to go on what the current law is. So we'll put one together with that. If nothing passes, then you'll have to look at that in June. Hopefully by May 25th, we'll know a little more, but we may have to ask you to pass a budget that'll have to be amended after the special sessions. Okay, next slide. Projecting revenue, once again, we're looking at 483,000 more than we got this year. Next slide. We've looked at this. Fund balance is very healthy. We should add a little bit to that this year. The components, you have a pretty good leeway of what you spend. Once again, we're not encouraging you to spend that, but there is some money there if you need to spend it. Next slide. ESSER funds, virtually all gone. They will be gone after next year. They have to be gone after next year. Most of those have already been allocated to different areas. Next slide. What we're talking about covering at the workshop, and we can certainly cover anything you want, is past budgets and salary information, current status of the budget process, legislation, current projections, possible incentives, salary comparisons, and the catch-all for anything else that you might want to take place in the workshop. Okay, next slide. And that's the wonderful budget report for this month. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Jackie?
Thank you, Dr. Bixby. Did the appraised values, the preliminary numbers come in?
Yeah, we got, and they warn us, whatever you get in April, don't count on. It's about an 8.5% increase. Typically between the April one and the one we get in July, there's about a 2% drop in that. So we're probably looking between 6 and 6.5% increase. Of course, we won't know that till the end of July, but historically it's dropped about 2 to 2.5%. Because none of the appeals have been heard yet. And there's a bunch of them.
Any other questions?
I do.
Carla?
Dr. Bigby, will your salary comparisons be throughout the Metroplex? I know sometimes we focus on our area, districts in our area, but will they be, I'm asking for you to
We can
put
certainly
them
do that.
throughout the Metroplex.
Okay?
And will most of them be 23, 24 salaries? Or, I mean, I know we're waiting. I mean, it just depends, I know, but
Yeah.
have most districts already voted on salaries? They're
Now,
like
we've
us?
seen some that have come out and said, we're going to do this, this, and
Okay.
this. Now, whether those are, assuming they're board approved, they wouldn't be putting them out, but
Would you
we can
give
put
us
that
those?
together,
Okay,
too.
thank you, thank you.
I say we. I don't have a mouse in my pocket. Nothing like giving you work, is there?
Any more questions? Jackie?
Dr. Bixby, can you give us a refresher, or I should actually direct it to Dr. Smith, like funding breakdown, general ed, special ed, underperforming schools, how much money we get from the state, you know?
Sure, yeah, we can include that
We
in
can
the
do
budget
that.
workshop.
Sure, that's
Absolutely.
easy to do. We'll also give you, some of that's interesting because they give us about half as much as what we spend. So we can give you what they give us and plus what we've typically spent in those areas. That's, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to information discussion item, agenda item B, Facilities Assessment Report. Dr. Smith.
All right, thank you, President McNeely. I'm going to go ahead, as I'm kind of making some introductory comments, I'm going to ask if the Huckabee team can come on up. Just want you to know we have been working really consistently on our facility assessment. I met with the Huckabee team a few days ago and just reviewed the work of the presentation today, and I'm just looking forward to sharing this information with you. I know we've kind of been slow rolling the process, and that's been on purpose because we want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure we allowed the proper amount of time to assess the facilities and then package a report that we can present to the board. And I think we're at that point now where we're ready to take that next giant step in the bond process. And so I want to give the floor to Mr. Andre Brackens and your team, and you can guide us. So you have the floor now.
Okay, all right. Well, President McNeely, members of the Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith, thankful for the opportunity to come before you tonight and be able to present the findings of our facility assessment and our space utilization study and evaluation. And I'd like to also introduce my colleague. She's the Director of Communications and Community Engagement and Bond Planning, Leslie Weaver, and she will be presenting tonight as well. So if I may have the latitude, again, I just want to express thanks and appreciation. Madam Vice President, Trustee Phillips, thank you very much for your service. It matters when the things that you value are our students, our educators, our taxpayers, and our community. So thank you for what you mean, not only to this board, but to Duncanville. It's a big deal. So much respect. And as obviously has been seen by your colleagues, thank you for being a servant leader who cares. So thank you for the latitude to present that. So next slide, please. As we start, you'll notice May 15th, you'll see that flag. Today you're receiving the Facility Assessment Report. Now you're receiving an overall summary because there's a tremendous amount of data and study and analysis that has gone into the document. And actually, I think, Dr. Smith, you may have one, but it is basically summarized with all of the data, all of the analysis, and all of the backup included in this binder. And I believe Dr. Smith will make it available, and we will, the Huckabee team, would be happy to meet with you one-on-one if you want to get into the granular study of the material. But we'll be looking at it at a high level and summarizing it so that, again, it will be a good understanding and assessment. It's an executive summary, and then also the educational space adequacy is a summary as well. The next slide indicates that, and that's what we'll be looking at tonight in our few minutes. Next slide, please. So to give you an overall idea of our assessment, we had a team of over 10 people. We were tasked and given the opportunity to be able to deliver this report. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with and serve Duncanville ISD. We appreciate it. We're assessing 26 educational and educational support buildings, conducting over 25 interviews, compiling data, running the analysis and algorithms, and delivering almost 500 compiled pages of the summaries, the studies, and the backup so that you can use it as a decision-making tool moving forward in Duncanville ISD. And I would like to just take a moment to thank Dr. Halachka, who, again, her leadership and commitment and the access that she gave us helped us navigate through a tremendous amount of material. And then I also want to give kudos to your staff. And I just mentioned to, Dr. Smith that everyone was the consummate professional. They knew what they were talking about. They gave us the information that we needed, and that really expedited the process and allowed us to put the data together and be able to present this report. So we definitely appreciate it. And in Dr. Smith's word, that, that excellence that we experience in engaging and collaborating with him, he said, well, that's expected. That's the standard, and we certainly experienced that. So kudos to your team. Next slide, please. First, we'll start with what we call the District Educational Facility Matrix. Now, this doesn't show the educational support facilities. These are just the educational buildings that we wanted to start with. Now, our educational support facilities were included in the study, but that's more towards the end of the study, and we wanted to focus on specifically looking at how really your space allocation and space utilization analysis worked out also with the cost of what we were going to call needs or deficiencies that you'll see in the report. And as we start, we have some key definitions that we'll reference throughout the report that we want to define so that everyone understands it. That first one to the right, you notice it says building capacity. And that building capacity basically looks at every seat in your instructional areas being filled at every moment. Now, that doesn't happen actually, but still, that's what building capacity means. Functional capacity means that the instructional spaces are optimized, and how often they're used during a day, the power that's used to keep them running. That's the functional capacity. Right-sized is a term really where we want to land. Right-sized means that the instructional space is optimized in terms of the number of times it's used during the day, but it also meets and or exceeds the TEA guidelines for instructional space. And so you'll notice in the matrix, it's just a quick summary so that you can have a quick glance to be able to see the name, the grades, the square footage, the enrollment, the capacity, and the utilization. Now, this particular matrix is based on building capacity, okay? So that's where we're starting. So the building was designed with a certain capacity, and we can see based on what the student population is, what enrollment is, what that utilization actually is. Next slide, please. So if we start with our summaries, we're going to start with the instructional space utilization for your elementary schools. And it's a simple pie chart that reads, the green indicates that the TEA standards are met for all cumulatively the elementary schools. Okay, so we'll break it down in terms of elementary schools, your intermediate and middle schools, and then the high schools. And we'll look at those summaries at a high level. But you notice here, the green represents that the TEA standards are met. The yellow means that it's basically larger than the TEA minimum required. And the red, which is what we all want to be concerned with, those are the spaces that do not meet the TEA standards for your instructional spaces. And so you'll see at a summary about 34% of the elementary school space does not meet TEA standards. Now, that's not a big surprise considering when most of the buildings were actually designed and constructed, 60s, 70s, 80s, they don't meet those standards. So that's not a big surprise. But that green, I think, is a good indicator. The reason that number is so high is obviously because of your academies, your newest ones, Acton and Hastings. They meet those TEA standards, and they offer that type of instructional space. So something else to note, and this is just so that you understand, when we talk about a floor plan or how a building is organized, you notice in the top right, there's just a small matrix that gives you an idea of a prototype design. And basically a prototype means it's the same floor plan for that particular school. Now, different things may have been added to make it what we call site-specific. Although it's a different site, it's the same floor plan. But there may have been something else added, freestanding gymnasium, portable buildings, things like that. But for the most part, that prototype building would be the same. So that matrix shows you a prototype designation. You notice Fair Meadows and Merrifield would basically have the same type of floor plan. Alexander and Smith, Bill Hart's, Hyman. Now Central was a standalone, obviously being originally the high school. And then obviously Hastings and Acton are not prototypes. Those are your newest elementary schools and academies that have been designed. Next slide, please. This just gives you some idea of the elementary classrooms that are undersized and crowded. Wanted to show you that photograph just to, this is a reality of what's happening. And I would again say, again, your staff, your administrators, your teachers, they're doing a great deal with what they have. And you'll notice, though, that there's not a lot of space in terms of being able to really deliver your educational delivery in the way that should be, really expected. Now, they're doing the best with what they have, and it's great instruction, but you notice there's not a lot of room to move from stations or collaborative learning or things of that nature. Next slide, please. The instructional space utilization for the intermediate and middle schools, again, these are what we're looking at combining. And if you look at the left pie chart there, you see that 58% meets TEA standards, but again, the one that we're concerned about is the 41% that does not. And so Hardin, Daniel, and Brandenburg would be those prototype designs, meaning the same floor plan that were made site-specific, whether it's, a freestanding gym or portables or things like that that were added. You notice on the right, middle schools, similar numbers, 60% can meet, but 35% is a pretty large number. Now, just to get some idea of what does that mean per student. If you look at, let's say, the total number of classrooms, I'll go back and use the elementary schools as an example. Let's say you have a total of 235 classrooms that do not meet TEA standards. Well, at 22 to 25 students per classroom, we're talking about 3,000 students. So it's a significant impact in being able to understand those spaces that do not meet the TEA standards and help facilitate your educational delivery. Next slide, please. This just gives you, again, the photos of the intermediate middle school classrooms. You can see those two are undersized and a bit crowded. And again, we saw that consistently as we had boots on the ground going out during our assessments and also during our interviews as well. Next slide, please. And this is the instructional space utilization for Duncanville High School. And you notice this one is almost in thirds. And I think since that's almost 1 million square feet and we've had many phases throughout the years, you can kind of see that a third meets the standard. You have a third that probably are larger than the TEA standards and a third that do not meet the TEA requirements as well, specifically for the high school. Okay. Next slide, please. This just gives you an example of your CTE instructional space. It again is undersized and a little bit crowded. And so as we look at the CTE programs and space adequacy, additional applicable learning labs and classrooms would be necessary. You have a very robust program. Public-facing community access, that's just as we heard the example and a little bit tongue-in-cheek about Mr. Shorty and how, again, he wanted to be a part in supporting, your students and setting them up for success. Because your program is so robust and you do some unique things, not only in the state, but in the nation, you certainly want to be able to give the public access, obviously in a safe environment. We're not compromising safety in any way, but you have such a stellar program, you certainly want to be able to accommodate that. The program adjacency alignment, what we found both in our interviews and during our time on campus is that sometimes you had a program that is on one end of the wing and another program that was on the other end of the wing, and they needed to cross-pollinate. But because of the space, they're way apart. They needed an adjacency to allow that cross-pollination and collaboration as well. Then obviously updated equipment and resources. Again, that's not a criticism. I know you're doing the best that you can with what you have, but it is a reality. The data is benign, but it's true from that standpoint. So it's not a criticism, but it is an observation. It is data, and it is facts. So next slide, please. So if we move from the space adequacy and then begin to understand the building condition summary, there's something really important called an FCI, okay? And that FCI is a Facility Condition Index, and it's an industry standard throughout the insurance industry as well that gives you some kind of understanding of, what kind of condition the building physically is in, okay? And let me give you some idea. It's a quick read. Green is good. the red is poor, but you notice the replacement aspect, anything that is greater than a .30, okay, means it needs to be replaced. Now, what does that mean? There is an algorithm that we place all of this data in, okay, from the needs to the assessments to things that need to be updated, basically the condition of the building. We put all of that information into an algorithm, and then it gives us this rating. And again, this is a national standard, the FCI, the Facility Condition Index, and it generates a number. And from that number, you can see, your facilities that are good. And intuitively, it makes sense. Obviously, Acton is in good shape. Hastings, those are your newer facilities. Others have been in great shape as well. And I would just say, for your maintenance team and again, Mrs. Mora and Mr. Paterka and their team, they do a great job in terms of what they have. But on many of these facilities, really the useful life of a lot of the HVAC systems and different systems, they're just, they have a limited lifespan. So they continue to try. It's almost like one hand tied behind your back. Again, they make it nice and they keep it going as much as they can. But when the useful life of that equipment has ended, it just it makes it really difficult. So that's the condition summary at a quick glance. And again, it is an algorithm. We put a lot of information and a lot of data into it, and then it again grades it. And if it's greater than a .30, then that's replacement. Okay. Next slide, please. Here, our needs and deficiencies are itemized by building, and they're assigned basically a dollar value to correct that need and that assessment. And so you kind of see a breakdown of where we are. Each one has a tag, numeric tag associated with it. Now, this includes both your education facilities and your education support facilities as well. So this was everything in the site. And you see where that number comes in at about $125 million. Now, let me say, don't necessarily get stuck on the number. We did allow an escalation of about 1% per month, considering when these may or may not, if you elect and decide to move forward. If you started some of these projects, let's say, again, 14 months from now or whenever it may be, you can see what escalation is like. Now, let me remind you, 4 days ago, I was very excited because gas was $2.89 a gallon, and 2 mornings later, I got up, I was like, man, I should have went then because it went up to $3.15 just like that, and it continues to rise. I use that example because as we look at escalation, as we look at material shortages, as we look at labor, this number can vary somewhat. But 125 million sort of encapsulates where we are in terms of the needs assessment as well. And again, that's for your educational and your educational support buildings as well. Okay, next slide. So in summary, I would say that, the district facilities are generally well maintained, but again, if it is, if a piece of equipment is at the end of its useful life cycle, not a lot you can do. It needs to be replaced. That includes roofs as well. Your learning environments are outdated and undersized per TEA regulations. We saw some of those percentages. Many of the classrooms and even some of the entire schools need to be right-sized. That goes back to that, that definition that we looked at earlier. The ADA, which is your handicap access and security upgrades are needed, district-wide. We know technology changes really fast, so the technology and furniture is somewhat outdated. But for Duncanville High School, and again, I think this is where you're just absolutely stellar in terms of what the students are experiencing. But your CTE, your T-STEM, your collegiate and P-TECH programs are growing. They need space. They need adjacencies as well. And finally, there really wasn't a defined space for early childhood education, which is definitely a need that we see trending not only in our other client districts, but boy, if you can get them when they're young and then allow them to be able to really process through, we want to set them up for success. So that being said, next slide, please. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, and
I think this question may be for Dr. Smith. I noticed that the natatorium was listed
Yes.
But it had zeros next to it. I'm not really
Yes.
sure what that meant. What is our plan for the natatorium?
The natatorium is a part of the study. It does have a score you want to.
Yes, yes, the natatorium is included, and I'm sorry to make this clear, it's included in the Duncanville High School number itself.
Okay.
Holistically, yes.
And then the PTech program, do we have a particular plan for that as far as space is concerned? I know we're doing CTE and we have the JROTC. What's the plan for?
Yeah, so, obviously, under the conditions we're in now, we're utilizing the facility the best of our ability.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideally, if we're able to get to a place where we can pass a bond, then we want to expand the facility and the space so that it becomes much more conducive to the kind of experiences we want to provide for our students. So that's kind of a part of what this plan is to help us to see, okay, what is possible? What can we do? Because there's so much room for growth and opportunity there.
Right. I know our PTech program, who's here to speak about our PTech?
Dr. Jordan can.
Dr. Jordan, would you just summarize kind of what our PTech program is so that people can see the need for its own space?
So currently, we are the only high school that has P-TECH, T-STEM all together in early college in one location. But when we focus on P-TECH, we're talking about our engineering, and we're talking about having a space that is completely designed for 21st century, where students have access to digital technology. And right now, we're sharing spaces with other programs. And so it's not a designated space. We have makeshift labs right now where students are cross-using resources and materials.
Because there are other districts that have a whole wing set aside for PTech, and those students are able to experience a different level of education. And like ours, they're not even cohorted, right? Are they just in with the general?
So they're cohorted, and they do have their designated pathway classes. However, they also are mixing in, so because of this limited space. But they do have their designated just for our P-TECH students classes.
So it would just be a huge benefit because that program is really moving to provide them their own space so that they can grow and really experience what that program can do. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Mr. Bracken, are the tennis courts included in the high school study?
I don't believe so in this one specifically. I know that that's a need. I'd have to look at and I do have the data here, to see if that, in that building analysis in terms of that FCI, Facility Condition Index, because I know that the tennis courts have a need, so that should have been included in that valuation, but I can get that specifically in the data here for you.
And I have another question.
Yes.
Would you help me understand the data on the facility matrix?
Yes.
And for the control room in the back, I think that's the first slide.
This is where I have a question.
Okay.
It was near the front. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't know if we can go take the slides back, but,
They're not there yet.
okay, Trustee Fahey?
They're trying.
Okay, keep going,
Just going
keep
through it.
going. There we go, there we go.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay, the utilization column compared to the capacity, I read this as only Kennemer and Duncanville High School as being really crowded. Like with Acton, 69%, does that mean that there's 30% not being used?
Well, what this means, and again, I'd go back to and a great question, Trustee Fahey. I'd go back to the definition. When we say building capacity, that means every seat field. So what that looks at is what the facility was designed for and what the actual enrollment is. But what it doesn't take under consideration is whether or not it is a TEA standard that's being met. It just looks at the physical space itself. So some of those, when you look at building capacity, those numbers just give you some idea of what it was designed for and what the current enrollment is. So, for example, like you're saying, you can see Byrd is at 92%, Kennemer is at 106% from that standpoint, but it doesn't, the way the data reads, it doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, we have this amount of space now that can be utilized. Now, in the data, what it will tell you, there will be summaries that tell you basically based on the student demographics, the demographic report, it says that you have the capacity for another 70 students over the projected, next 10 years. It'll give you that kind of information specifically on the study. So this matrix is more of a high-level look at building capacity, but the data will show you and give you an example of specifically how many students you can accommodate in that facility. So it does give you the summary, but what this doesn't show you is the TEA standard being met. Does that help?
Yes, and the capacity does not include the portables. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that was very helpful last time is when you had those committee meetings and y'all kind of helped go over this information with committee people who in turn provided information to us.
Yes.
And that was very helpful. They also, I think, even went to some of the campuses
Yes.
that needed an extra
Tours.
eye.
Yes.
And we did as well. Yeah, that was very, very helpful.
Yes.
Very helpful. So I assume that you take this information, because this is just as it is. It's
Yes.
not, oh, we could do this and we could do that.
Correct.
We're not to that stage yet,
Correct.
right? You do know about the other property we have. How many acres is it? I don't even know.
The ag farm?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes. How
Yes,
many
ma'am.
acres is that?
Oh, boy.
Anybody know?
I did some test fits, did take a look at it, and, we knew that was available
Because as
as
they
well
were
in that
talking
analysis.
about the constraints at the high school, that could maybe be, it's not big enough for a whole nother high school, but
Correct.
for those programs possibly.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But,
Yes. And as we get direction, as we move further down the road, we'll begin to look at ultimately, what could be and what could happen, so.
But the
yeah.
process you took us through the last time was extremely helpful, and I see on the timeline that we are anticipating committee meetings in May and June, and that's a really good process.
Yes, and Leslie's actually going to take us through that timeline
very
and what comes next in the next portion as well. So, good. Any more questions? Yes. Trustee Colton?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for a very informative report. I just have a general question. So a school like Central Elementary,
Yes.
what would it cost to build that new today?
Again, probably the best way to put it, we just had an elementary school that bid probably about, I would say 3 weeks ago, and I'm just going to give you the square foot cost. It actually came in at $500 a square foot. And 4 years ago, we were around $260 a square foot. Now, something's got to give with the, obviously with the market. That's a very recent bid. But when we go through, if you want us, if the committee chooses to have us give some assignments and some different scenarios and analysis and costing scenarios, we're prepared to do that because we have the latest costing information as well as escalation to be able to apply to it as well. So typically, if you needed further than a square foot number, and again, probably around 30 to 35 million for an elementary school. Okay, next slide, please. We'll talk about the next steps would be long-range planning and a master plan development, which encapsulates some of the things that you were talking about, scenarios, properties available, what are some of the options, and as, we're ready to roll up our sleeves. You give us, the scenarios that you're interested in, and we'll give you the data and the costing. So we'll move on now to the bond program development and informational campaign, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Leslie.
Thank you, Andre, and good evening. It's an honor to be here. We love working with Duncanville ISD, so I feel like you set me up very well. We're going to talk a little bit about what those next steps would look like and how we would engage your community, make sure everybody's informed, and looking at what the right plan is for your school district. Next slide, please. So you've seen this timeline. Andre started with it. So now what I'm going to be looking at are the 3 flags to the right, the anticipated committee meetings this month and next month. If the board chooses to call an election, I think most of you know you have 2 times a year you can hold school bond elections. One of those was last Saturday. Your next opportunity would be November 7th, Election Day. So if that's kind of the goal, what you're looking forward to, August 21st would be the deadline to call that election. Next slide, please. So one of the things we do when we partner with your school district is we help engage those community members like you were talking about, bring in local business partners, bring in parents and other stakeholders, and work through the Citizens Facility Advisory Committee process. Andre and his team will help develop cost estimates so we know exactly how much schools would cost, whether we want to renovate something, if you're looking to do something brand new. They will work through all of that in the, as a schedule, and of course that schedule would drive the escalation cost that he mentioned. Just like he mentioned the gas pumps, if what we spent one day isn't going to be the same we're going to spend in 2 months. Same is true for commercial construction. And then if the board chooses to call a bond election, we would also be available and honored to assist with the informational campaign and make sure your community has all of the facts they need, and that we're educating voters and building support along the way. Next slide, please. When we're looking at the committee membership, it's important that we have a true cross-section of your community, everything from age, gender, ethnicity, what part of the district they live in. We have parents' voices, students' voices, staff voices. And the little box on the right, it's really important that we have the right representation in the room. We want the process to be very transparent. We want, none of this is done in secret behind closed doors. This is intended to bring the community in and inform and engage the community. We want everyone to have a voice in the process. We're going to be looking to build consensus along the way, and that so committee members feel like they have ownership in the process and can bring a sound recommendation back to the board so that you can make informed decisions on the future of your facilities. Next slide, please. The purpose of the committee is to really assess the school district in prioritizing the district, assessing the needs, which of course this facility assessment is one start to that, and then prioritize the needs, not just the needs you have today, but let's look 10 years down the road, let's look 20 years down the road. We want to make sure we're considering the educational needs of all students. Internally, we've already been kind of talking about last bond program kind of focused on the middle grade levels. You might have some more needs at the early childhood and at the high school levels, or the bookends, if you will. But we do want to make sure we're looking at all needs of all kids across the school district. We would hope that the committee brings forward a recommendation that's fiscally sound and it feels responsible to your taxpayers. And ultimately, they will bring that recommendation on what they recommend the board does and how to proceed with that facilities plan. Next slide, please. Right now, we have 2 full-day meetings scheduled. So I think this full-day format will allow people to come in and get immersed in the information, spend all day long, diving deep into the facts, diving deep into the facilities, conditions, touring the campuses. We're going to get on a bus and go around so they can see firsthand with their own eyes and experience what your students and staff experience. We're going to look at different program needs that there might be out there. And then come back and really analyze all of the projects that we've considered, prioritize and rank those projects, ultimately reach consensus as a group, and bring back that recommendation. Next slide, please. This slide just kind of shows some pictures of different committees that we've worked with. The idea is to really engage them in the process, do different activities where they're getting a voice, where they're getting to give feedback in real time. The little chart on the bottom right is a tool that we use sometimes just to help give numerical values in the ranking. Kind of sometimes takes a little bit of the emotion out of it and makes it more of a mathematical way to have data-driven decisions. Next slide, please. So this is a few additional dates for you to consider. So we would be available and making sure that the board has all the information you need in the form of updates in June and July. The committee would bring recommendations to you at your July school board meeting. Have any additional committee meetings if needed. You might have feedback for the committee and maybe they need to reconvene one more time in July or August or a couple of times. And then at your August school board meeting, if you're wanting to move forward with a November bond, you would need to do that by that August 21st deadline. And then early voting for November election begins October 23rd and election day is Tuesday, November 7th. Next slide, please. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the committee process and the community engagement part. Yes, ma'am.
It's just a comment. I think when you have full-day meetings, like on a Tuesday, I think that's going to limit some areas of people.
Okay. That is something we'll definitely take a look at.
Anybody else? Thank you.
I was just gonna, because I got concerned because this is on a information agenda, but we're already in the process. We're going with our vote from last month. Thank you.
Yes.
I just was scared.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to information discussion, agenda item C, strategic plan update, priorities, students, families, and community connections. Dr. Jordan and Ms. Brown.
Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. It is our pleasure to provide you with a Priority 2 strategic plan update this evening. While we're waiting on the presentation to load, next slide, please. So last month I shared with you strategic plan Priority 1 updates, and over the next couple of months you will have different district leaders providing you updates. Tonight our focus will be on Priority 2, student, families, and community connections. Next slide. So as Ms. Brown and I provide you with an update, we are focused on 3 main areas. Our Priority 2 goals are to provide students with choice opportunities at a 15% increase annually, increase student participation experiences and service opportunities to ensure that 90% of our students are connected with their areas of interest, and then expand social, emotional, and wellness supports by 10% annually for students and families. Next slide. So I am excited that this past school year we launched 3 new elementary choice programs. Alexander Elementary, we launched the Collegiate Exploratory Academy. Central Elementary, we launched the Digital Media and Performing Arts. And then Hastings Elementary, we launched the STEM Academy. Next slide. So I will walk you through briefly each one of those programs just to give you a high-level overview of what's been happening at those campuses this past year. At Alexander Collegiate Exploratory Program, our focus has been, and I will share in all 3 examples, exposure and access. That's our goal, to give our students exposure, access, and experiences so that they can have awareness and be able to excel in the 21st century. So through at Alexander, They've had exposure to AVID, and what AVID is, it's advancement via individual determination. The purpose of AVID is to close opportunity gaps by preparing all students for college and career readiness. AVID usually serves in our underserved communities. If you visit Alexander, you will see that they have turned that campus into a college environment. They have tenants the moment you walk in, focused in on Ivy League schools, community colleges, public colleges, historically black colleges, and then vocational colleges. It's giving our kiddos, starting at the pre-K age, access to many different colleges. They also have implemented something called the Ron Clark House System. Ron Clark is a school in Atlanta, focuses really on reinforcing positive behaviors. And so what Mr. Lanier and the team has done is they've divided those houses. Students all have a place of belonging. That is so important. Not just students, teachers are divided into houses. And their houses are all named after those different types of colleges, and they have incentives. You can earn points. If you go to Alexander, you'll see the students in the hallway. Many of them have their bubbles in their mouth, but they have big eyes when they see you because they want you to reward or praise them so their house can get a point, right? Once they get a point, they earn different incentives and prizes throughout the year. Again, the houses are all mixed up. So although you are in kindergarten, you might be in a house with students who are in 4th grade and teachers who teach 3rd grade, just so that they can build a culture of community at that campus. Mr. Lanier also hosts a principal's roundtable. That is his student advisory board. So you'll see on the slide, you have to the right of me where you see Mr. Lanier sitting with a group of students. He meets with them and they give him kind of keep him in on the skinny of what's happening at the campus. And before he rolls out anything, he goes to his advisors. They also have implemented student council and hosted career day. One of my favorite things that happens at Alexander's, they have Duncanville High School mentors that come down and connect with the 2nd and 4th grade students. And it's so important for elementary students just to see the future, and then for our high school students to go back and love on our kids. Next slide, please. Next, at Central, Digital Media and Performing Arts, Exposure and Access. I could spend all night talking to you about what is happening at Central with the piano lab and the digital media. We've integrated movement and dance into their lessons. They have a robotics club. They have this phenomenal piano lab where our kiddos are playing the piano, and they have lessons twice per week. 3rd grade is the focus, and they also have a great digital media lab. They just completed their spring showcase. It was focused on Disney, and they had over 275 students participate in the spring showcase and 250 students participate in the fall showcase. And I will tell you that the Shine Auditorium was over capacity with the families all there to see the showcase. Next slide. Hastings STEM Academy. One of the great things about Hastings STEM Academy, and then Mr. Brackens was talking about using spaces. They have that collaboration spaces throughout Hastings. Students are able to complete interdisciplinary STEM projects. That means that their projects are based on all the curriculum areas, reading, math, science, and even social studies. They're going cross-curricular so that students get hands-on experiences. They've had guest speakers come in and talk to them about STEM. That is so important for students at an early age, also for our female students to know that they can go into STEM as well. They've hosted a spring STEM parent night that was very well attended, and they've participated in many field trips. As you can see on the slide, our goal was to make sure that each grade level had access to a field trip and experience outside of the school building. Next slide. So this is super exciting. But what we discovered by launching those elementary choice programs at 3 campuses, that we unintentionally ran into some barriers. So we have 3 campuses. I tell you how excited I am, but we realize that all campuses, all students deserve access and exposure, and not just focusing on 3. Now, we know that money and funds are not unlimited. So what we will be doing next year, next slide, while we continue to work our plan to add choice programs, this upcoming school year will be launching signature programs. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how signature programs differ from choice programs. So we have the 3 elementaries with choice programs, and we're kicking off 5 new elementary signature programs. Next slide. So our signature programs will be at Bill Hart's, Fair Meadows, Hyman, Merrifield, and Smith. And what we did, first and foremost, is looked at our campuses that did not have a choice program, look at the community, look at the needs, and see where we can connect our schools to our community. And so as we talk about the different signature programs, you'll see Merrifield is focused on civic duty and service leadership. That is near the police department. That's where our Tarrant County Food Bank will be. That's where our Panther Pantry is. How awesome would it be for our students to get exposure in community service, but also learning about civic duty? Whereas you see mass communication at Hyman, focusing on developing students' verbal and written communication skills. I will say that this has been almost several months, about half a year to a year in process planning, looking at our pathways, seeing what we currently have in Duncanville, and how can we build the foundation of our students so that they are prepared to select a pathway at the high school level. And so if you see on the slide in the middle is Duncanville Independent School District. All of these pathways are aligned to our high school and middle school pathways, just to make sure that our students are eager and excited and know what's out there before they get into middle school and high school and have to pick a pathway. Next slide. So you're probably thinking, what's the difference between signature programs and choice programs? First and foremost, signature programs are campus-wide. So every student in a signature program at that campus has access to that program. It's really focusing in on academics, so embedding some of these experiences into our curriculum, providing exposure at the campus, but also taking the students outside of campuses. So the signature programs are based on students' home school. If you are living in Smith's attendance zone, then you will participate in the environmental science. Our choice programs, we are focused in on certain grade levels. For example, at Central, we have a focus on third grade. However, our choice program provides opportunities for families to have choice. So if you are at a campus that is not a choice program, we do allow you to follow the district transfer process to request a transfer. However, your transfer is contingent upon the seats available at the campus. Our first priority is to make sure our students who are zoned for that school have access. And then once Student Services reviews all the transfers and they determine how many seats are available, transfers may or may not be granted. But students in choice program do have the access to transfer into a choice program. Whereas signature programs, it's pre-K through 4. Everyone has access and exposure. Next slide. So our focus for signature programs, again, is to level the playing field. We're not removing or not moving away from choice programs. It just takes time. We're focused on quality, not quantity. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate resources. We do a good survey study to make sure we design a choice program that meets the needs of the schools. And now that we're talking about bond, we want to make sure that we're not launching a new choice program that we may change when the bond, if and when the bond passes. So now we have signature programs that's focused on academics. So again, adjusting our curriculum. And we're using, it's not just a curriculum team, it's not on the principals, it's not on the teachers. We are contracting with some vendors to help us build in those exposure and experiences into our curriculum to make sure teachers load lesson. Right? We don't want to add more to teachers' plates, but we do want to make sure students have access throughout the day. So if we're learning about mechanics and we're learning about sound and we're learning about really anything science related, how cool would it be for you to launch some cars down a ramp? Or how many of you remember the egg drop, right? So we're adding those experiences in so that it's not up to a grade level, up to a campus, or up to a teacher. It's already put into our curriculum. We're also launching some student clubs and then making sure that we're focused in on skills so that our students have awareness, exposure, access, and experiences. Again, our signature programs are school-wide. Every student has access to it. It connects our schools to the community, and it includes ongoing professional development for staff. As you see on the slide, we have a timeline of just implementation and rollout for the program, just to make sure that we are ready to launch in August and feel great about launching quality signature programs. I will tell you the team is heavy into curriculum development and already preparing for June, which is our professional development focus. Next slide. And now I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Brown, and then I will come back to answer any questions that you have.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, President McNeely, Dr. Smith. I am going to discuss the social and emotional wellness supports that are in Priority 2. And so counselors this school year have provided close to 14,000 individual and group counseling sessions. This includes both campus counselors in addition to the support counselors that the district has. The district has provided almost 500 students and families with items from the Panther Pantry, and so that's dealing with food, clothing, other supplies that they have in addition to hygiene items. The social workers this school year have added 2 new district partnerships, and so with those 2 district partnerships, they are with Trusted World. We see a picture of 2 students receiving supplies, and so the counselors can fill out a form with Trusted World. They can let them know that they need various items, again, food, supplies, hygiene items, things of that nature, and they actually deliver it to the campuses. And so they deliver it right to the campuses per the counselor's request, and so that's one new partnership. And they've delivered 241 items this school year, including clothing, shoes, and hygiene items to the students. And then we have the North Texas Food Bank partnership that has begun this year, and they have donated 384 boxes of food this school year, and that is including students and staff members that are in need of supplemental food. And so we're really proud of those partnerships, and they'll be continuing on next year as well. Next slide. And so this slide, we'll be discussing the restorative practices program that we have in the district. And so our first year of restorative practices has gotten off to a great start. We had 568 staff members that were trained in restorative practices. Additionally, we offered 61 different professional learning sessions throughout the year. So we have our restorative specialists, and they provided additional PD throughout the year in various formats, face-to-face, virtual learning, lounge and learn, just to continue the practices that the teachers learned throughout the summer. Additionally, we have had 12 campuses to receive a restorative reward, and so those are campuses that have increased their restorative practices, which means they reduce punitive disciplinary actions. They provided other items, maybe taking away a privilege, counseling, SEL support, but not necessarily an ISS or OSS or DAEP placement. So they found other avenues or restorative practices to provide discipline. And then to date, we have had reductions thanks to the team and all of their hard work with ISS, OSS, and DAEP numbers in comparison to the 21-22 school year. Next slide. And so when you're combining the data that Dr. Jordan just presented and I presented for Priority 2, our progress is at about 65%. We're reaching those different targeted goals with Priority 2. We're going to continue to monitor and track the programs. She's tracking the choice programs along with student enrollment. We're going to continue to provide the restorative practices, the professional development support. We have some good PD that we're planning for the summer, and continue to engage staff in the SEL programs and practices and training to continue to have that positive impact on discipline throughout the district. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. We'll move on to reading local policy exhibit.
Good evening, President McNeely, trustees, and Dr. Smith. In accordance with BF Local, the board is required to adopt local policy revisions. Therefore, I'm bringing to you this evening 4 local policy exhibits that have specific staff names noted that we need to update based on position and responsibility changes. For local exhibits DIA, FB, and FFH, the ADA 504 student coordinator for the district is now under the responsibilities of Dr. Jordan, so these policy exhibits are all being recommended to reflect this change. For local exhibit FFC, the district's homeless student liaison is under the leadership of Ms. Pam Brown, so this policy exhibit is being recommended for updating as well. This is the first reading of these policy exhibit changes, so they'll be brought back to the board at the June meeting for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jackie?
Thank you. I just have a general question regarding services provided to homeless students. Dr. Brown. Yes, ma'am. Provide a general overview of, what we do to help students that are homeless.
So with the McKinney-Vento students, of course, they work directly with our social workers. They're in contact with the families every week to make sure they do weekly check-ins on all of those families, personal phone calls to make sure that they're receiving the support that they need. But of course, when we enroll the students, we discuss with the parent, that we can provide transportation if needed. We keep track of their housing. A lot of them are mobile. Dr. Sadberry, she helps work with our families, and sometimes she helps to find other resources. Some of those donations that have been previously announced throughout the board, throughout the year, Concord Church, different organizations that have often donated items. The McKinney-Vento students or the homeless students have often been recipients of those items. But we do weekly check-ins with those families just to make sure that they're supported and providing them with community resources. And that's in addition to our nursing department, making sure they know about the free eyeglasses, immunizations, and all of those things, even transportation services, the medical appointments that are offered through Parkland and Children's and programs that they're not aware of.
About how many homeless students do we have?
So we have around 110 homeless students in the district. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
In addition to those services, their McKinney-Vento status is also taken into consideration with discipline and things in their interactions with admin and school-based things.
Any more questions? Do we have any communication? Let's go home. Thank you.